I want you to try something for a second. If you're listening to this and your hands are currently free, just hold your arm out.
Yeah, just give it a stretch.
Right. Now bend it. Straighten it back out and bend it one more time. Look at the joint doing the work.
It doesn't look like much, does it?
No. Honestly, it seems like the most boring, utterly basic mechanism in the entire human body. It feels like a standard issue door hinge.
Right. You open the door, you close the door.
Exactly. But what if that boring little hinge is actually like a complex 3-in-1 masterpiece of bioengineering?
It really is the ultimate anatomical illusion because we look at the elbow and our brains just categorize it as this simple, dumb pivot point, a middleman.
Yeah.
But underneath the skin, when you actually look at the mechanics, it is anything but simple.
And that is exactly what we are getting into today in this deep dive. We are anchoring our entire conversation in a truly fascinating, incredibly comprehensive presentation by Dr. Christophe Delong and Kinexa.
It's such a great piece of research.
It really is. It's an exhaustive analysis of the elbow. And our mission today is to unpack their research and show you how the elbow isn't just a mechanical relay between your shoulder and your hand. According to the Kinexa research, it is the ultimate articulation of precision.
Which is just a brilliant way to frame it because, if we zoom out and look at the arm as a whole, the shoulder is essentially the explorer.
Right.
It's this massive ball and socket joint designed to throw the arm out into space, giving you an enormous range of motion. But the trade-off for all that freedom is that the shoulder isn't, it isn't incredibly precise.
I think of it like the shoulder can get your hand into the right zip code, but the elbow is what finds the exact street address.
That's a great way to put it. The elbow is the microscopic adjuster. It's what allows your hand to interact with the environment with absolute millimeter perfection.
But wait, hold on. If we're talking about millimeter perfection, a simple door hinge isn't going to cut it.
No, definitely not.
I mean, a door hinge just flaps back and forth. So how does the elbow actually achieve that level of precision? Because DeLong's presentation completely shatters the illusion that it's just one joint.
It really does. The paper calls it a functional tripod.
Yeah, and it mentions it's all wrapped up in something called a single synovial capsule. Let's start there, actually, because I don't think most people know what a synovial capsule is.
Right. So imagine a heavy-duty biological envelope or like a customized shrink wrap that entirely seals the joint.
Okay.
Inside that envelope is synovial fluid, which acts as a highly specialized oil bath to eliminate friction.
So it's literally greasing the wheels.
Exactly. But what's unique about the elbow is that the single oil bath doesn't just hold one joint. It houses 3 distinct joints interacting simultaneously.
Wow.
Yeah. You have the humerus, which is the large bone of your upper arm. Then you have the 2 bones of your forearm, the ulna, which runs down the pinky side, and the radius, which runs down the thumb side.
Wait, so 3 different bones forming 3 distinct joints, all bathing in the same fluid pocket?
That's right.
That sounds way less like a basic hinge and more like, I don't know, inside of a really complicated Swiss watch, or maybe an advanced camera tripod where multiple levers are doing completely different jobs around a central axis.
That tripod analogy is spot on.
So how exactly do these 3 bones divide the labor?
Well, let's take them one by one, starting from the top down. The humerus, specifically the bottom part nearest the elbow, acts as the master guide track. But it doesn't just have one shape.
Okay, what do you mean?
On the inside of the elbow, it has a surface called the trochlea. And on the outside, it has a surface called the capitulum.
Those are some heavy Latin terms. What do those actually look like if I'm, holding the bone in my hand?
Fair enough. Picture the bottom of the upper arm bone. On one side, the trochlea looks almost exactly like a spool of thread.
A spool of thread, got it.
And on the other side, the capitulum looks like a tiny, smooth sphere or like a little marble attached to the side of that spool.
Okay, that makes sense. So the humerus is providing 2 very different tracks for the forearm bones to ride on.
Exactly.
Okay, so the upper arm is the guide track, half spool of thread, half marble. What about the ulna, the pinky side bone?
So the ulna is your pillar of stability. It forms the main hinge part of the joint by hooking perfectly onto that spool of thread on the humerus.
Like a wrench on a pipe.
Yeah, it forms a tight C-shaped grip. Its entire job is fidelity. I mean, it stays relatively fixed to provide a stable, rigid base for the arm to push and pull against.
And I want to bring up something that really confused me in the text. There's a specific part of the ulna called the coronoid process, and the researchers call it the clavicle of the elbow.
Right, the clavicle analogy.
Which makes 0 sense to me visually. A clavicle is your collarbone, Why are they comparing a piece of the elbow to a collarbone?
It makes sense when you think about what a collarbone actually does. Your clavicle acts as a physical strut, you know. It props your shoulder out and keeps it from caving inward toward your chest.
Okay, yeah.
Well, the choroid process is a tiny bony beak that sticks out on the front of the ulna. It acts as an internal strut for the elbow.
So it's physically blocking the joint from collapsing.
Exactly. Imagine you are pushing a heavy wooden door open. The force pushing back against your hand travels down your arm and tries to snap your elbow joint backward, like completely dislocating it.
Ouch.
Yeah. The coronoid process is the bony wedge that stops that from happening. If you fracture that tiny little beak, even if all your muscles and ligaments are perfectly healthy, the elbow will simply slide out of place every time you push something.
That is wild.
It really is. It is the absolute linchpin of stability.
Okay, so the humerus provides the track. The ulna is the rigid pillar with its built-in safety wedge. But my forearm isn't totally rigid. I can twist it around. That has to be the radius doing the work, right?
You've got it. The radius is the adaptive rotating component. Remember that little marble, the capitulum, on the outside of the humerus?
Yeah, the little marble next to the school.
Right. So the top of the radius bone is shaped like a very shallow cup. It rests right against that marble. But more importantly, it rests against the side of the rigid ulna in a way that allows it to freely spin.
I want you, the listener, to physically feel this happening right now. Just hold your upper arm tight against your ribs.
And bend your elbow to 90 degrees.
Right, so your hand is out in front of you. Now flip your hand so your palm faces the ceiling and then flip it so it faces the floor. Do that a few times.
You feel that complex rotation.
Yeah, that is not your whole arm twisting. That is your radius bone physically rolling completely over the top of your ulna. Your ulna stays dead still as the pillar, and your radius dances over and around it.
And it's that specific interplay, the uncompromising stability of the ulna combined with the rotational freedom of the radius. That gives the human hand its incredible versatility.
You can hold a heavy tray of food stable while simultaneously rotating your wrist to hand someone a glass.
Exactly.
But here is where the Kinexa presentation completely flipped my understanding of bioengineering. Because if I am building a precision instrument, something that needs to be stable and operate with millimeter accuracy, I am going to make it perfectly symmetrical.
Of course you would.
Right. I want it machined to absolute perfection. If I buy a door hinge at the hardware store and the pin is crooked, I'm returning it because it's going to break. Yet the elbow is deeply, fundamentally asymmetrical. Why is bad engineering considered good biology?
Because the body is solving problems that a door hinge never has to deal with.
Yeah.
Let's look at that spool of thread on the humerus again, the trochlea.
Okay.
In a perfect symmetrical hinge, that spool would be perfectly horizontal, but it's not. It is actually a helix. It spirals. Furthermore, the inner edge of that spool hangs down significantly lower than the outer edge.
Which, again, looks like a manufacturing defect. Why would one side of the spool hang lower?
It creates something called a physiological valgus, or what we commonly call the carrying angle.
The carrying angle.
Right, because that spool is lopsided. When you fully straighten your arm, your forearm does not point perfectly straight down toward the ground. The bone is forced to angle slightly outward, away from the midline of your body.
The paper actually gives the exact degrees for this, which I found fascinating. It says that for men, the forearm angles out by about 10 to 13 degrees. And for women, it's slightly more pronounced, about 13 to 16 degrees.
And do you know why it's slightly wider for women?
To compensate for a wider pelvis.
You got it.
And that is the exact moment this clicked for me.
Yeah.
Think about walking home with 2 heavy bags of groceries. If your arm was a perfectly straight plumb line, your hands would constantly bang into your thighs and your hips with every single step you took.
Exactly. If the elbow were a perfectly engineered straight hinge, the only way to carry anything heavy without hitting your legs would be to consciously use your shoulder muscles to hold your arms out wide.
And your shoulders would be exhausted in 3 minutes.
Right. That tiny asymmetrical spiraling defect in the bone means that gravity naturally clears your hips for you.
It's unbelievable. A crooked bone is actually a feature, not a bug. But that's not the only purposeful imperfection. The text details another massive asymmetry, this time involving the biceps muscle. So your biceps comes down from your shoulder and attaches to the radius bone at a specific anchor point called the bicipital tuberosity.
Yes, the bicipital tuberosity.
But it doesn't attach right in the center of the bone, does it?
No, it's significantly offset. The anchor point is shifted by about 3 to 5 millimeters off-center.
When I read that, I immediately thought of a bicycle. If you put the pedal right in the dead center of the wheel, you have no leverage.
Not at all.
You have to push incredibly hard to make the wheel turn. But if you attach the pedal to a crank lever that extends outward, suddenly you have a massive mechanical advantage.
Right.
By offsetting the bicep attachment by just a few millimeters, the body turns the radius bone into a crank lever.
That is a perfect analogy. The radius acts as a crank, but here is the catch. Because it's offset, it only provides that mechanical advantage in very specific positions.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, because of that 3 to 5 millimeter shift, your biceps has the longest lever arm, and therefore the most leverage when your palm is facing up. We call that supination.
Okay, so what happens when I turn my palm down?
Well, when you turn your palm down pronation, the radius bone rotates, the anchor point shifts inward, the lever arm shortens, and you instantly lose about 30 to 40% of your pulling power.
Which explains so much about the real world. If you go to the gym and jump on a pull-up bar, doing a chin-up with your palms facing toward you is always easier than doing a standard pull-up with your palms facing away.
Oh, without a doubt.
You literally have a better physiological gear ratio just because your palm is up.
It also dictates how we design our tools. Think about a screwdriver. Most of the human population is right-handed. Driving a tough screw into wood requires turning your wrist outward, clockwise.
Okay, yeah.
That movement, supination, is your strongest rotational force because your biceps is maximizing that offset crank lever. Pulling, twisting, lifting, all of it is governed by a few asymmetrical millimeters of bone.
Wow. Okay, so we've got this beautifully crooked, functional tripod that gives us mechanical leverage and lets us clear our hips. But we need to talk about the sheer physical forces this joint endures.
Oh, yeah, it takes a beating.
Seriously.
Yeah.
Because the Kinexa presentation laid out the math, and honestly, with all these offset levers and sliding cups, I'm amazed our elbows don't just shatter into dust.
The structural loads really are staggering. We usually think of our knees and hips as the joints that take all the punishment because they bear our body weight. But the elbow takes extreme forces, especially during athletic movements or sudden impacts.
Yeah, the paper specifically looks at a standard push-up. Just a regular, everyday push-up generates between 2,000 and 3,000 newtons of force on the elbow joint.
That is a lot of force.
Right. To put that in perspective, that is the equivalent of stacking roughly 600 pounds directly onto that tiny, complex hinge.
And how the elbow survives that 600-pound load is where the 3-in-1 design really shows its brilliance. If you asked an engineer to guess where that force goes, they would naturally assume the main hinge, the heavy ulna gripping the spool of thread, takes the brunt of the weight.
Right, because it's the pillar.
Exactly.
But the research says the exact opposite. It explicitly states that 60% of the compression force bypasses the main hinge and goes straight through the humero-radial joint.
Yes, the tiny, shallow cup of the radius resting against the little marble of the humerus.
That seems entirely backward. Why would you send the majority of a 600-pound load through the smallest, most mobile part of the joint?
Because it acts as the primary buffer. If the rigid, unyielding ulna took all 3,000 newtons every time you push yourself off the floor, the cartilage in that tight hinge would grind away in no time.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, by transferring 60% of the force through the radius, which has a bit more give and can slide slightly, the body creates a shock absorber. It protects the main hinge from premature arthritis and wear.
But, I mean, bones and cartilage alone can't hold 600 pounds of force together. They just slide apart.
No, they definitely need help.
And that brings us to the soft tissue, specifically the ligaments. And I love the phrasing the researchers use here. They don't say the ligaments lock the joint down. They say the ligaments provide intelligent stability.
That's a crucial distinction. Ligaments in the elbow aren't just, strips of duct tape holding things rigidly in place. They are dynamic guides. Let's look at the medial ulnar collateral ligament, commonly known as the UCL.
Oh, anyone who follows baseball knows those 3 letters intimately.
Oh, absolutely. The UCL acts as the primary hub-on or guy wire on the inside of the elbow. Think of a tall radio tower. It has high-tension wires anchoring it to the ground so it doesn't blow over in the wind.
Okay.
The UCL anchors the inside of the elbow in exactly the same way.
So mechanically, what is actually happening when a baseball pitcher throws a 95-mile-an-hour fastball? Why does it put so much strain on that specific wire?
Well, when a pitcher violently whips their arm forward, the heavy forearm and the baseball naturally lag behind the shoulder for a split second.
Right.
This creates an extreme whipping motion that physically tries to pry the inside of the elbow joint open. Imagine using the arm like a giant nutcracker trying to snap the bones apart from the inside out.
Yikes.
Yeah. The UCL is the only thing standing between a successful pitch and the joint completely opening up.
And because they are throwing pitch after pitch, enduring that extreme nutcracker force over and over, that guy wire suffers microscopic tears. It wears down until eventually it just snaps.
Exactly.
And that's what leads to the infamous Tommy John surgery, right?
Yeah.
They literally have to weave a new tendon in there to replace that blown-out guy wire.
Precisely. It perfectly illustrates how much force a single ligament is responsible for mitigating. But the UCL isn't the only vital safety net. There's another ligament that is equally crucial, but it manages a completely different kind of movement, the annular ligament.
This one was fascinating to read about. So earlier we talked about the radius bone freely spinning so you can turn your palm up and down. The annular ligament is a tough fibrous ring that literally loops around the neck of the radius. It hugs it tight against the ulna.
Right. It functions exactly like a collar or a mechanical bearing. It holds the radius securely in place so it doesn't drift away, but it's smooth enough inside to allow for 180 degrees of free, unhindered rotation.
But just like the UCL, this fibrous collar has a vulnerability, and it leads to a very specific pathology mentioned in the text. They refer to it as pronation douloureuse, but listeners who are parents probably know it as nursemaid's elbow.
Yes, it is incredibly common in toddlers and young children, usually under the age of 5, because their joints are still developing.
Right. So picture this scenario. You're walking down the sidewalk, holding a toddler's hand.
Okay.
They trip, or maybe they just decide to throw a tantrum and drop their weight toward the pavement.
The classic toddler drop.
Exactly. Without thinking, you reflexively pull sharply upward on their hand to stop them from hitting the ground. What is actually happening inside their elbow in that split second?
Well, because a toddler's annular ligament is still relatively loose and pliable, and the head of their radius bone isn't fully formed, that sudden, sharp, upward pulling force does something dramatic. It physically yanks the head of the radius right out of that fibrous ring.
Like yanking a button straight through a buttonhole.
That's exactly it. The bone slips out of the collar.
And instantly, the child's arm is locked in a slightly bent position. They refuse to use it, and they are in a lot of pain.
Yep.
All because that intricate little 3-in-1 mechanism got slightly derailed. Now, a doctor can usually fix it in seconds with a very specific calculated twist that pops the button right back into the buttonhole. But it just proves how deeply dependent this joint is on these highly specific, intelligent safety nets holding the tripod together.
But if we step back for a second, we've only covered half the story here. We have the hardware, the 3 asymmetrical bones. We have the safety nets, the ligaments acting as guy wires and collars. But hardware and safety nets are completely useless without software to run them.
We need a brain.
Exactly. We need to transition from the structural mechanics to the nervous system. Because this is where the Kinexa presentation truly elevates the elbow into what they call an organ of perception.
And that phrase stopped me in my tracks.
Right.
Because looking at the anatomy, 3 massive nerves cross the elbow: the ulnar nerve, the radial nerve, and the median nerve.
Right.
If the elbow is just a simple hinge swinging back and forth, why is there so much neurological traffic routed directly through it? It's like building a massive 12-lane fiber optic superhighway just to service a tiny one-stoplight town. It feels like overkill.
It would be overkill if it were just a hinge. But the reason for that massive neurological traffic is that the elbow is intensely sensitive. It isn't just passively executing commands from the brain. It is constantly gathering and transmitting data.
Really? Like what kind of data?
Well, the synovial capsule and all those ligaments we just talked about are absolutely packed with mechanoreceptors.
Okay, mechanoreceptors. Those are sensors that measure physical changes, right? Like stretch and pressure.
Correct. They are tiny biological sensors that are constantly calculating the exact tension on the guy wires, the angle of the bones, and the speed of the rotation in real time.
Wow.
They feed a continuous stream of data back up the superhighway to the brain. This is the biological foundation of proprioception.
Meaning your body's ability to know exactly where your limbs are in space without you having to visually look at them.
Exactly.
Which is vital. Think about an everyday action. If I'm staring at my laptop screen and I reach out to grab my cup of coffee without looking at it, my elbow has to know precisely how far it has extended and precisely how much the radius has rotated to orient my hand.
Right.
If it's off by even a few millimeters, I knock the cup completely over and ruin my keyboard.
And achieving that millimeter precision to successfully grab the cup requires a very specific type of muscular orchestration.
Right.
The Kinexa text emphasizes that moving the elbow isn't just a simple matter of the biceps pulling to bend the arm. and the triceps pulling to straighten it, it isn't an either-or scenario. It operates on a dual control system.
They call it co-activation. And honestly, this is the ultimate aha moment for me in understanding how we control our bodies.
It's a game changer.
It's exactly like driving a powerful car.
Right.
If you want to pull up to a stop sign smoothly, you don't just slam the gas pedal and then completely take your foot off and hope you coast to the exact right spot. You feather the gas and you gently apply the brake.
That's a really good analogy.
Thanks. The presentation explains that the flexors, like your biceps, and the extensors, like your triceps, literally co-activate. They fire at the exact same time.
What's truly fascinating about co-activation is the sheer energetic cost of it. It takes a massive amount of cellular energy to fire two opposing muscles against each other simultaneously.
That makes sense.
But the body willingly pays that energy tax because the payoff is absolute control. By pressing the gas pedal and the brake at the exact same time, you achieve a perfectly smooth, controlled trajectory. You can decelerate the arm's movement flawlessly as the hand approaches its target.
So think about a neurosurgeon doing microscopic work, or a concert violinist playing a delicate symphony. To keep their hands perfectly steady, their biceps and triceps are locked in this intense, high-stakes tug of war.
Exactly.
They're constantly micro-adjusting the tension against each other, burning massive amounts of energy just to keep the elbow completely stable.
That is exactly what's happening. The elbow is essentially a master regulator. It takes the raw, explosive power generated by the large muscles of the shoulder and the torso, and it filters it. It breaks it, refines it, and stabilizes it so that the delicate, highly sensitive muscles of the hand and fingers can do their intricate work without being completely overwhelmed by the sheer force of the arm behind them.
It is the ultimate transition zone. I think it's safe to say that after unpacking this exhaustive analysis from Dr. Christophe Delong and Kinexa, you can never look at your arm the same way again.
I certainly can't.
The elbow links the raw power of the shoulder to the delicate finesse of the fingers. It manages 600-pound forces using asymmetrical spiraling bone structures, offset bicycle crank levers, and an incredibly dense fiber optic network of sensors.
It is the exact location where raw motor intention gets translated into perfectly controlled action.
I want to leave you with one final provocative thought, drawn right from the conclusion of this research. Because the elbow is so incomprehensibly complex, and because it relies on these very specific hidden rules, the carrying angle, the offset levers, the gas and brake co-activation, the researchers note that it actually serves as a brilliant model for computer vision and AI movement analysis.
It has become the ultimate benchmark. If an artificial intelligence can understand and replicate the kinematics of the human elbow, it has essentially cracked the code of human motion.
Right, so think about the implications of that. Right now, tech companies in Silicon Valley are spending billions and billions of dollars trying to build a perfect humanoid robot.
Oh, yeah.
And if you watch their presentations, they're completely obsessed with building perfect human-like hands. They spend all their time on the fingers. But what if they're obsessing over the wrong joint?
That is a great point.
What if the real secret to mimicking human grace, that fluid, perfectly decelerated, precise movement we all take for granted, doesn't actually lie in the hand itself? What if the key to the robotics revolution is actually cracking the subtle, spiraling, profoundly asymmetrical code of the elbow? It's definitely something to mull over the next time you blindly reach out and perfectly grasp that cup of coffee.
It certainly changes your perspective on what constitutes advanced engineering.
It really does. Suddenly, that boring hinge doesn't seem quite so simple anymore.